Welcome back to the Community of Innovation podcast, brought to you by the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation, otherwise known as CABHI. I'm Allison Sekuler, President and Chief Scientist at CABHI and at the Baycrest Academy for Research and Education.
And I'm Roseanne Alliong, Executive Director of Research, Innovation, and Translation at the Baycrest Academy and the Director of Research, Innovation, and Translation at CABHI.
Today on the pod, we're revisiting the keynote session from CABHI's 2024 Summit, Defy Dementia, where I had the amazing opportunity to interview Dr. Eyre about brain capital and the brain economy.
So, Allison, you had an opportunity to speak to a world expert about something that I think a lot of our audience has probably never heard of. What stood out for you?
It was an amazing conversation. I think we could have gone on forever. And you're right, it was a concept that a lot of people haven't necessarily thought about, but it makes so much sense. And really, what Harris was talking about was the fact that if we want to have a healthy economy, we have to have healthy brains. That's really at the crux of what he's talking about. So there's this concept called brain capital, which is really the combination of brain health and brain skills. And it was just fascinating how he put these ideas together and really made us think about brain health in a different way certainly than I ever have. How about you?
So I completely agree with you. Harris really spurred new ideas, but big ideas, in the sense that he talked about nature capital. So we think about, if a society is nature negative in terms of air pollution or deforestation, that makes sense to make a negative impact on the economy. But then he thought about a brain negative society as well. And we think about that link between a nature negative, a brain negative, and how it impacts the economy. And he brought up like air pollution, which I thought was kind of interesting because air pollution makes for a nature negative society. But we've also said that air pollution is a risk factor for dementia. So then again, air pollution also makes for a brain negative society. So, these just big concepts that I don't think people think about. And Harris really pulled it together.
Yeah. But the other thing I think it's important to realize is that he's talking at this really big conceptual level, but he does bring it down to earth, so to speak. And he gives specific examples of what we as society, what we as individuals can do to go from brain negative to brain positive. And it was really interesting to think about how what needs to be done, for example, in Canada, in the United States, might be different from what might need to be done in some other parts of the world. So depending on where you are living in the world, where you need to start, maybe in a different place. And so the specific toolkits that they're developing to help everybody increase their brain capital is going to be looking a little bit different, whether you're living, here in Canada or in the United States, or say in the Philippines or in South Africa or somewhere else. We could go on and on. This is really just a tip of the iceberg of that whole conversation. So without further ado, let's get to the episode. I'm thrilled to be welcoming Dr. Eyre, physician, neuroscientist, entrepreneur, and policy strategist to the summit, and he is joining us from San Francisco. Harris, welcome.
Thank you, Allison. Thanks for having me.
Dr. Eyre is an expert in the brain health technology field, and he has co-led major commercial contracts, product development, dilutive and non-dilutive capital raising efforts. He's an entrepreneur dedicated to creating awareness, knowledge, skills, and leadership for the brain economy. And we'll get to that in a moment. He also leads the Brain Capital Alliance, and he's in the Champions Cabinet of the Davos Alzheimer's Collaborative. And he's a fellow with Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy and the Stanford Frontier Technology Lab. Harris is an alumnus of the Forbes 30 Under 30 and the Fulbright Scholar Program. And he's also an awardee of an EB1A Green Card, which is an honor reserved only for people at the very, very top of their fields. So we're really pleased that he's here with us. He has over 200 papers authored, and he was the lead editor of a book called Convergence Mental Health. And he recently authored a Lancet Neurology paper about brain capital and the brain economy, which is, of course, the topic of today's conversation. Harris will be filling us in much, much more today about what brain capital is. But to give you just a teaser, George Vandenberg, who is the convener of Davos Alzheimer's Collaborative, has said this: brains make the world go around. Brain capital drives economic empowerment, social resilience, emotional connection, and remarkably, is not captured by GDP measures. Brain capital also has been highlighted by world-leading platforms such as the United Nations, World Economic Forum, Bloomberg, Forbes, Financial Times, AARP, and the US Congress. And in their work, Eyre and his colleagues are advancing a global strategy aimed at integrating brain capital into all policy domains. They also are championing an investment plan, which has led to the formation of a new venture capital fund, and they've designed a brain capital industrial strategy to amplify brain power and invigorate economies. Harris, thanks again for being here with us today.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
So, Harris, as I mentioned before, you are a jack of all trades. You're a physician, you're a neuroscientist, an entrepreneur, an author. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background, and how did you get here today?
First of all, Allison, thank you for the invitation to speak to you today and to speak to the summit as well. I really love CABHI and what you're doing, and I'll talk more about why I have so much respect for your work. But so fundamentally, I'm searching for impact. I'm searching for ways that I can maximally at scale improve the brain health of citizens of countries. That's really in everything that you see what I'm doing, what I'm trying to get at, what I'm searching for. I come from the Great Barrier Reef region of Australia, the northeast of Australia. My medical school was focused on health equity, focused on high quality healthcare for First Nations people, rural people, remote people. So that's sort of in my heart and in my one part of my brain. The other, and I was also trained in neuroscience and psychiatry in really high-end neuroscience. So in my work, you can see the duality of a search for equity and a search for using advanced neuroscience to achieve that. I have worked in my quest for impact. I've worked in entrepreneurship, co-founded a company, and led the development of a company in the precision psychiatry field, and have done advisory to SMEs and then large corporations. And now I'm really focused on public policy, because I really think that that's the way that I can achieve a systemic impact. And when I mean public policy, I mean, the public sector, but also the interface between public and private.
Yeah. And where you're trying to get that impact is in this area of the brain economy and brain capital. These are not necessarily terms that many of our attendees will have heard about before. And in your writings about the brain economy, you describe brain capital as being paramount. It includes social, emotional, and cognitive brain resources. And you also describe transitioning to the brain economy as a really critical and timely issue, given the advances that we've seen in neuroscience with the rise of generative AI models and accelerating societal and environmental challenges. And at the CABHI Summit today, we have attendees who are innovators, researchers, clinicians, end users, investors. They're all focused in this aging and age tech and longevity sector. So can you, for all of that group, give a bit more background about brain capital and the brain economy? What is it, and why is it important for all of us?
Sure, yeah. So let me first of all say that the conference theme this year is Defying Dementia. I think that this investing in brain capital of citizens and transitioning to the brain economy is key to defying dementia. So, and it's also beautiful that I'm with you guys as a Canadian organization. Brain capital initially originated from Canada, from Michael Wilson and Bill Wilkerson about 12 years ago. They published a nice report, and I've basically picked it up and tried to create a new field of economics out of brain capital. So anyway, that's just nice to be back to close the loop with the Canadian friends. So fundamentally, I believe that the current economy is brain negative. The current economy is doing many things to suboptimize our brains. We have air pollution, which is not good for our brains, we know. We have an industrialized food system, which is promoting, and it's about high salt, high sugar, high chemical food, which we know is not good for our brains. We have sedentary lifestyles, not enough access to nature and walking and stuff like that. A lot of stress, tremendous stress, whether it's political or conflict, actual wars breaking out and economic issues. So in many ways, the world is brain negative. Also included in that, right, is the lack of investment in solutions for brain health across the lifespan. And so that means that we are suboptimizing the brain capital of our citizens, right? Of ourselves, of our family and friends and constituents. So we need an economic transition. We need to be brain positive. That means regulating things like social media that are corrosive to teen brains and minds. It means getting better food supplies, that are healthier, reducing sedentary stuff, investing more in innovation and in research and science. It means basically the whole economy globally needs to transition. So this is big stuff. I got this inspiration for this economic transition model from the nature field. The World Economic Forum and McKinsey have previously talked about how the current economy is nature negative, right? We have loss of forests and loss of biodiversity. Yeah. So they argue for a nature positive economic transition, which is all about building nature capital. So isn't it beautiful that we can learn from the nature field in the brain field? So that's what this is all about. And certainly, as you can tell, right, if we have a brain positive economy, it's going to improve longevity, brain longevity, the brain health span, so that we have good quality brain health right up until our last days. So it's all very much aligned with your summit theme.
And it's interesting because you mentioned the nature deficit, and one of the risk factors for dementia that a lot of people don't know about is air pollution. With all of the climate change, and we have more fires, all of those sort of air pollutants, that's actually also affecting our brain health. So you've actually done some of the work related to climate change, and it's not separate, is it, from brain health? It's because it's all interrelated in these different ways.
Yeah. You're just reminding me, Allison, of the tremendous wildfires in Canada recently, which were very shocking. And actually, my wife and I planned to come to Baycrest. We had to cancel our trip because of their quality, and we came back another time. But so the United Nations talks about One Health. There's One Health for people, One Health for animals, and One Health for the planet. Absolutely. Planetary health and human health is inextricably linked. And you gave a good example of air pollution. As climate change gets worse, there's more trauma on people. As you get deeper into that, into looking at the nature-brain interface, you start to realize that, our microbiomes are very diverse, right? And very much related to soil health and the quality of our foodstuffs. And actually, as you walk through forests now, we know that there is aerosolized bacteria coming off the trees, which is optimizing the diversity of our microbiome. So there's all these beautiful interconnections between the human brain and nature that really get us to the point to recognize we need to engage in climate discussions and sustainability discussions as a brain field, not just stay purely in the health domain.
Yeah, it's a really underappreciated connection. So I'm glad that you've raised it here today, and hopefully see a lot more work done in that field. One of the other things that I mentioned earlier on is the growth of, say, generative AI, right? And you talked about, the interrelationship between nature and the brain and all of these different kinds of things. Those are all natural, biological elements. And, as you're looking forward to the next 10 years, you've started writing about how global corporations are recognizing increasingly that the economy hinges on this brain capital. And you've been part of major international policy discussions that are talking about how we really need to invest in the development of brain capital and how to be able to tackle those contemporary social challenges and foster innovation. That's really got to be at the center of everything. So with all of these other kinds of changes that are coming online, including generative AI and other kinds of political and social economic crises and so on, if you looked into your crystal ball about the future, taking all of that into account, what should innovators and investors here be thinking about today as they're creating and developing solutions that are going to impact our aging populations over the next 10 years, let's say?
Great question. One of the reasons why I'm so grateful to be here with you, Allison, in front of your audience is that we know that the people that are doing innovation in brain health and aging are essential and vital kind of entrepreneurs and creatives, because we know that the population around the world is aging. in most countries, we have population aging, and we know that actually some public pension funds around the world are projected to run out of money because of this population aging. So, and then we also see that population aging of many countries is reducing the credit rating of the actual sovereign, like the central banks of countries and their currency. So this is population aging is a major threat to the economic security of nations. And if democracies have economic insecurity, it means that actually they have national insecurity and that democracy weakens. So like at a big level, aging and brain health innovation is critical. So I would just say simply to your entrepreneurs and investors, stick with it. You are vital to the sustainability of governments and big businesses too. So keep at it is my message.
Yeah. And just to be more concrete, I guess, thinking about like, why is brain health and aging important for brain capital? Is it just as simple as you get older, you're more likely to have less healthy brains for various reasons, unless we can defy dementia, et cetera. So people may not be staying in the workforce as long as they can. They may not be making the most use of their brains to create whatever the next generation of something is, to contribute to society, to contribute to economy, to culture. Is it really just as simple as that, or is there more to it?
It's a great question. And, we could spend a couple of days unpacking this topic, but fundamentally, I'm very inspired by this idea that as we get older, our wisdom accrues. This is the great work from Dilip Jeste from UC San Diego. So as people get older, we know their wisdom is accruing, their understanding of how to be empathetic, compassionate, how to be productive, to be creative. So we need to this is like at an economic level, Allison, and I'm a humanist at heart and all about human rights and stuff, but I'm trying to, in a sense, as you can tell, hack economic structures, because that's where the power of society lies. So from an economic perspective, if we can capture wisdom and foster wisdom for as long as possible, that's great for societies. So we need to prevent dementia. We need to treat late life depression, late life anxiety issues. We need to respect, older adults. We need to cut out stigma. We need to support people. If they want to stay in the workforce longer, then that's great. That would be the ultimate awesome thing. But even if they don't want to stay in the formal paid economy, let's support them to have a purposeful volunteering career, because, volunteering is this massive value to the economy that's also not captured, frankly, by GDP either. So let's just help people to live longer, better lives and be more engaged and invested in their communities as they see fit. That's really critical. And that's the brain capital of older adults. That's sort of the relevant point there.
And just so you know, and our listeners know, some of the research that's come out of the Rotman Research Institute here at Baycrest has suggested that volunteering actually is also preventive if you're trying to reduce your dementia risk. So another bonus.
Yeah, Baycrest does amazing work from innovation with products and services to all this great research, and then healthcare and policy, and not just locally in Toronto, but also pushing it out around the world. So another good example of the great stuff coming out of Baycrest. Yeah,
and we're really happy to have supporters like you out there in the world speaking to those sorts of things. So one of the things that you have talked about also in terms of the brain economy and so on are brain skills. So what are brain skills and how do they feed into the brain economy?
Yes. So in simple terms, brain capital is brain health and brain skills. It's like super simple. And brain health plus brain skills equals brain capital. Exactly. Yep. So brain skills are skills which are relevant in the near future in society and in the economy. Key ones, I'll just give you maybe 4. Adaptability. We need to be adaptable to work out what to do with generative AI in our lives, to adapt to what happens in the US presidential election and with all these wars and stuff and the weakening of democracy. There's many ways we need to be adaptable. Resilience is another key brain skill. We need to be resilient to whatever is coming every week or every month, right? There's always an interesting turn in this day and age. Third would be learning to co-pilot with AI. Who would have thought that a brain skill, 2 years ago, before generative AI broke out, on society that you would need to learn to co-pilot with generative AI, but that's an incredible new skill, right? And then the final one is algorithmic literacy. That's an important brain skill. We need to understand algorithms, what they are, how they're built, and how they're influencing us, how they're used in neuromarketing, how they're used to prioritize what we see in our news feed on social media. There's many ways that algorithms are great, but there's many ways that they can hoodwink us, right? And deep fakes on the news and ways that we can be frankly manipulated or addicted to our smart devices. So those are examples of key brain skills. And Allison, why the brain skills piece is important is because sometimes the brain capital area could be dominated by healthcare alone, but with the brain skills piece, it brings in education, education across the lifespan, and it brings in sort of labor market issues, labor participation, labor dynamics. So it helps to sort of prioritize neuroscience stuff to big senior political and private sector leaders. It makes us more relevant to them as medical people.
I always like when you think about a map of the world that the brain is really right at the middle of everything. That's what I have, a brain-centric map of the world and everything around it. So I really like that approach. And it's not really, you're right, it hasn't really been prioritized or discussed as much, as centralized as much as it could. When you're talking about the AI, I know a lot of our listeners are really interested in these rapid advances with generative AI. I wonder if you can just give a specific example of how you see over the next couple of years, how is we can't even anticipate necessarily what's going to happen with generative AI. That's what's making it so fun right now. But how is that going to impact this concept of not just brain skills, but brain capital more generally?
It's a key question of sort of futurism. What is the role of the human brain in the coming years in the age of AI? And I think, Allison, we need to keep studying this because, as you said, it's going to probably change a lot. It's impossible to predict it, but it's evident that AI could be horrendously corrosive, right? So, if we don't think about this, it could go sideways. Generative AI could manipulate us, could addict us to smart devices. It actually, as Yuval Noah Harari says, it could hack our human operating system, which is our interpersonal communications, right? It could fake sending an email to you from me that I never actually sent to you, but it could just insert that in and make you think that I don't like you or something like that. So we need to think
I would
about
never
this.
believe that email, just
Good. I would never think that. And so how do we prioritize the good parts of generative AI in our brains? How do we learn to co-pilot with AI so that we can basically use AI to our benefit? So that means we have to educate across the lifespan from little kids through to older adults, learning how to co-pilot with AI. We need to think about what are the brain skills that are important for us in the future, high level creativity, high level strategy, high level emotional intelligence. So it's those higher functions which are critical that our brains can do that AI can't. That's what we need to focus on. But I think we also need to recognize, Allison, that we don't want to be elitist, right? So we need to recognize that some people, living with disabilities, we need to care for them if they, if AI is taking, low skilled jobs away. We need to be cognizant that many of us at this summit are at the highest ends of cognitive function. We need to look after everyone in society. It's not just about sort of the elite educated people. So it again comes back to equity and thinking about this from an equitable perspective.
Yeah. And you do talk a lot in your work about inequalities in brain capital. And I wonder if you can share with us a couple of examples of where those inequalities lie and what we can do to keep them to a minimum.
It's interesting to think that around the world, democracy is weakening, frankly. We know that these democracy indicators are going down, that democracy strength indicators, and it's significantly driven by inequality. So inequality is a massive issue. And we think that there is a brain capital gap in society. There are the haves of brain capital and the have-nots. The haves are people that have access to good quality healthcare, access to good quality education. And then the have-nots are the opposite of that. No access to healthcare, not good quality healthcare, and not good quality access to education. So, Allison, if we don't think about brain science inspired policy, this gap is just going to get wider, right? People that are in the lower end of the brain capital gap, they're going to have jobs that are more likely to be automated away, offshored. And if you lose your job, you fall into a cycle of despair economically, emotionally, and depression, anxiety can set in. You don't have then the energy to go and get upskilled and reskilled. So it's possible that if we don't think about neuroscience policy and think about our brains, this gap is just going to get wider and we're going to have more destabilization of society. So my interest fundamentally is how do we think about neuroscience inspired policy to make sure this gap actually gets smaller, and we support people at the lower end of the brain capital gap so that they can get, so what does that mean? Good quality healthcare, access to healthcare, affordable healthcare, but then also the same for education as well. So this comes back to what are we doing for First Nations communities, marginalized communities, which I know is big in Canada as it is in Australia. We need to think about this in every country, frankly.
I was actually just on a call with some of our colleagues up in the Yukon, and they were highlighting for us that some of the sorts of solutions that come out of CABHI or even the health solutions that we have coming out of Baycrest won't work there because not everyone has access to the internet, right? And so if it's internet reliant, not telephone reliant, for example, it's not going to work the same way. So is that something that you see quite a lot, that the concept of the brain economy is changing in different regions? Not even, within one country, but also across the globe. Are there differences in brain capital from one region to the next?
Really astute point. We really just can't stay in our amazing high-end quad ternary elite ivory towers and generate solutions for frankly rich white people. That doesn't cut it. I was really acutely aware of this, Allison, when I was in Argentina in December. They have a tremendous 50% of their citizens there are food insecure. So why are we thinking about anything in the brain economy and brain capital building that's anything other than just food security, right? Because if you don't have food security, you don't have protein to build your brain, and minerals and vitamins and such. What chance do you have of, generating $1 billion unicorn company, right? So in low middle income settings, it's often getting back to more fundamentals, getting food insecurity, shelter, housing, fundamental forms of equality. So getting girls to school, for example. One of the things, Allison, that I'm passionate about is developing a toolkit for the brain economy transition so that we can have a toolkit that can be rolled out. Nigeria can develop its own brain economy transition toolkit, right? Which maybe is more focused on food security versus Finland that rolls out their brain economy transition toolkit. That's, probably less focused on food insecurity and more on these higher end, more resource intensive science and tech solutions. Right. So we need these types of thinking and allow people to originate ideas, with a sort of generally similar structure around the world. But then, of course, we need to coordinate between countries so that we can share best practices. And this is some of the work we're trying to do at the UN General Assembly to try to coordinate between high, low, and middle income countries. Yeah.
So that toolkit, it sounds like that you're developing is going to be different for different parts of the world. But even within one country, for example, in our rural areas versus our urban areas, it may look different. And it sounds almost like Maslow's hierarchy of needs is embedded within that toolkit. Because if you can't meet that, then you're not going to be able to get where you want to go. Is that a fair way of putting it?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Yep. And the question, which I would love feedback on for any of your listeners, is what is the most granular sort of plan level that we need to think about? Is this a city thing? Is this a region thing or a state or a country thing? Because we can think about this at different scales. So whatever people think is most useful, there's going to need to be a sweet spot in there. But certainly, and Allison, we're developing this with the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, which has this wonderful new brain health atlas, which is looking at brain health disorder issues across the world. It's a project in motion, and welcome anyone's feedback and advice as we move it forward.
That's terrific, and we can maybe put the contact information for that in the notes for the episode that we're recording right now. This conversation has been just incredibly fascinating. We could go on and on and on. Unfortunately, we've got limited time, and I know you've already given our viewers a lot to think about, but if you could just leave people with, say, the top 3 takeaways that you hope our audience, which again includes this wide range of people, clinicians, researchers, students, end users, innovators, et cetera. What are the top 3 takeaways that you would leave our folks with, particularly relating this concept of brain capital to aging and brain health?
Absolutely. So my 3 takeaways, one is we must transition to a brain positive economy, and we need a coalition of the willing. So think about, if you're an entrepreneur, an investor, or end user, what is your role in this economic transition? Secondly is, if you are in the field of aging and brain health, hang in there, because your relevance to society is only growing given the aging population and the resulting economic and human issues. So stick in there and focus on science and measuring your impact, and I guess best practices of operating your company as well, because things will take hold if you just stick to those fundamental things, which is what, of course, CABHI coaches people on very nicely. So those are my 2 big takeaways. And the third one is I guess just stay close to CABHI, because you guys are really the center of high quality coaching and science, and now in actually investing in these companies. You guys are, you've basically transformed brain health and aging from a moribund area of innovation where there was nothing. You've completely changed that with your own ingenuity and support from governments. So yeah, that's my third one. Stay close to CABHI.
My bit of take home is everyone should keep an eye on Harris Eyre, who is a tremendous champion for all things brain capital, brain economy, and brain health, which is part of that. Harris, thank you again for speaking with us today at the CABHI 2024 Summit. And thank you to everyone for watching. And thank you for joining us for this thought-provoking discussion. And remember that brains really do make the world go around. So thank you very much.
Well, you heard it from Harris himself, folks. Hang in there and stay close to CABHI.
I love that. I love that he pitched us as well, and he built us into the brain capital. But as you said, as he said, brains really do make the world go round.
Absolutely, 100%. And Harris and I really only scratched the surface about this concept of brain capital and the brain economy during our conversation. So if you'd like to learn more about Harris Eyre and his work, you can visit www.harriseyre.com. That's www.harriseyre.com. And we want to thank our podcast production team, including Helen Chen, Rhea Singer, Katie O'Connor, and Tammy Lamb, and our friends over at Podtex. And as mentioned, this episode was originally recorded as part of our 2024 CABHI Summit. So a big thank you to the team over at Cadoons, our summit sponsors, and all of our attendees.
And in line with the Defy Dementia Summit theme, this team, with additional support from the Baycrest Academy and CABHI, also produces Defy Dementia, a Webby-nominated podcast and program. So if you're interested in learning more ways to reduce your dementia risk and optimize your brain health, check out Defy Dementia, which is available on all podcast streaming platforms, or you can visit us at defydementia.org. To learn more about CABHI, please visit us at cabhi.com. That's CABHI.com. We'd also love your support of our podcast, so be sure to follow us and leave a review on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your pods. I'm Roseanne Alliong.
And I'm Allison Sekuler. Thanks for tuning in to the Community of Innovation podcast, and join us next time as we recognize World Alzheimer's Month.